Hey folks, lovely to have you joining us and welcome home to the battlefield. What a week it's been for all of us. You now know what we know, that the all-out warfare of Battlefield is headed to 2042. So stick around with me, Freeman, hello, and some of the gang from across DICE. We're here with you for the next while we look back at everything that we've revealed this past week. Now, to keep things as safe and responsible as possible, we are pre-taping this live stream so that we can spend as much time as we can talking with you and taking you behind the scenes. But please do say hello in the chat. We're all watching live along with you from our homes. So, starting us off, I'm here with Oscar Gabrielson and Daniel Berlin, Design Director for 2042. It's lovely to see the both of you. I mean, Oscar, you're looking resplendent.
But look, we've had a year of working from home, right? And you can use that time in different ways. One, of course, to build an amazing Battlefield 2042, but you can also experiment with beards and, exotic haircuts. But Daniel and I have agreed, as we reach our next big milestone, I can finally drop this thing, so we just need to hurry a bit, that milestone, right? And then we should be all good, back to normal.
No pressure, Daniel.
No pressure at all.
So let's get started then. 2042, a brand new setting for us for Battlefield. This is exciting. What got us to this era?
Yeah, it's actually one of those moments I remember quite dearly. So I think it must have been 3 years ago now. We kind of headed up on the 11th floor at DICE, and we were actually supposed to look at the concepts for this next Battlefield game. And this time around, the team went quite wide. I think we looked at 12 different concepts or so. Some really unconventional things, some that took us back in time, some things that took us into the future. We looked at ripmatics and, a lot of concepts. And then we got to this thing that we called 2042, and we all looked at that, piece, and kind of looked around the room, and we just kind of felt it in here. We found it. It was this kind of special moment of taking the best pieces of Battlefield 3 and 4, that notion of like modern warfare, and then spicing it up a bit with cutting-edge hardware, and some of that we've seen in the last couple of days, of course.
Yeah, another big thing for us as well. This is the first Battlefield in many years for us where we're putting full focus on multiplayer.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big one for us. I mean, multiplayer is what we do best, and we've done best across now the 2 decades the Battlefield has existed. So, in Battlefield 2042, 3 core experiences. Of course, now we've talked about all-out warfare. We're going to bring back Conquest and Breakthrough on a bigger scale than ever. 128 players, some pretty cool big land masses to play on. And then we have more to update on as we get to EA Play as well.
Yeah, because there really is so much more to this journey that we'll be sharing with all of you. Let's get into the absolute nitty-gritty of things, though. Daniel, big changes to Conquest. As Oscar mentioned, big focus for us in this first section. Yeah. But Conquest has had some significant changes to meet this big new scale that we have for 2042.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it is a leap for us, right? And when we go to 128 players, and when you go to a larger play space, you can't just kind of copy what we've done before. We had to also kind of reinvent how we approach level design and how we approach pacing in the game. So what we're doing this time around to really encapsulate still the essence of Battlefield and the pacing that our players know and love is that we're introducing this concept that we're calling clusters. While watching the gameplay reveal, for example, we have this map called Hourglass, which is set in Qatar, which is really, really awesome. And this map really speaks to the new mentality around the level design, I think, and the clustering, because you can almost imagine it as a massive battlefield. But within that massive battlefield, there's almost multiple battles going on. If you go to the western part of this map, you'll find a huge stadium. And within the stadium itself, there's multiple capture points. And if you want to own the entirety of the stadium, that entire sector, you have to actually fight and control all of the capture points within that sector to capture the entirety of the stadium. But then you can, so imagine that you're in there with your squad and you're engaged in a close quarter combat situation and it's quite hectic, and then you manage to win. You capture the objectives in the stadium and go like, okay, now it's a little pause, right? Then you run outside the stadium and you open up your maps and you go like, okay, where do we go next, guys? We see that they're capturing the Neon City on the far end of the map. And then you go like, okay, we got to get there. So you bring up your calling tablet, You say like, okay, when you're a transport vehicle, I need it over there. It comes down with a parachute, lands in front of you. Your squad hops in, and then you have a traversal as you travel to this other sector, which is a sector full of skyscrapers, where you can zip line between the roofs of the skyscrapers as you fight for multiple skyscrapers. So it's this concept of clustering objectives into concentrated areas where we can have high pacing, but then also having different types of gameplay in these. And in between these spaces as well, you have vast open landscape on the Hourglass map, for example, the rolling sand dunes. And it's really cool for people that really love vehicle gameplay to be engaged in vehicle on vehicle type of combat in between these clusters. But there's of course also within the level design areas of our maps that is built for the infantry and vehicle mix. And in Hourglass, there's a perfect spot for this. If you go down south of the map, there's actually a quite sizable village down there, which has interior for infantry, but the vehicles can also roam the streets there, and it's a really good matchup in there. And in the center of the map there, you have these massive arches that is overlooking this highway intersection where this massive convoy has run to a stop, and there's lots of vehicles that have been abandoned and stuff like that. So lots of stuff is happening with Conquest and with the level design in order to really bring out the scale and for us to really infuse more battlefield moments and just sandbox gameplay in general, I'd say.
Yeah, because this is very much just what we do, isn't it? Making these big maps. And I mean, we were talking earlier about how a lot of this new approach for us with clustering is very much inspired by the success we've had in maps in the past. Like Goldman Railway, we were chatting about earlier on, and Sinai Desert with the village that you kind of have there as well.
Perfect example.
This is where a lot of that kind of comes from for you and the team?
We kind of tested the concept a couple of years ago with those games, but now we're kind of taking that concept and we're taking it to the max, basically. So it's been really fun for us to kind of test around these different types of setups and landing on something that we really like. But I think that it's important to mention with Conquest that like the freedom and access to the sandbox is literally at your fingertips. Do you need a vehicle? Okay, column tablet, get it in here. Do you want to change out your customization on your weapon? Hey, the plus menu, just change it out on the fly. You don't have to respawn or anything like that. And the freedom of choice. Like, hey, I want to have close quarters. I go to the stadium. Hey, I want to have some awesome, crazy verticality. I go to the Neon City. I want to have, vehicle on vehicle gameplay. Let's roam the fields in between. But then we have breakthrough as well, right? In 2042, we're more separating the experiences and making them more distinct and leaning into the strengths of them to a higher degree, I would say. So while you have this, what we call varied pacing in Conquest, where you have those high octane combat situation in the stadium, and then the pacing goes down. And then you call in your vehicle, and then you travel, you talk, and you strategize. Should we attack the Neon City from the south, from the west? In Breakthrough, it's more like we take 128 players, and it's two teams, the defender and the attacker, and we compress them down to a smaller space. We say, like, now you're going to fight in this sector only. So Breakthrough is this experience where you go on this journey throughout the map. But it's just short time to action. It's just chaotic and crazy. But we're still leaning into the size here as well. We wanted to give you more tactical opportunity when you're playing Breakthrough than we've necessarily done in the past. So we still use the width of the map to a large extent. So if you find yourself spawning, running forward, just like, oh, there's a meat grinder in front of me, lots of people dying here, lots of things going on. We're now going to give you ample space to flank around and then take other strategic opportunities as well.
Yeah, and it really is exciting. So many of the Battlefield fans that I've been chatting to since we revealed the game and then showed off gameplay last week at Xbox, they are really excited at these changes. But then, of course, there's so many new players who suddenly are really excited to find out what this is. And I think one of the best new things that we're really adding is that we're creating kind of new ways for people to get into the experience with our use of AI.
Yeah, I mean, AI has been one of those things that we've been kind of, cooking back at DICE for many years, and Battlefield 2042 is kind of the perfect timing with next-gen tech to introduce it. So in Battlefield 2042, you can actually kick off the game and play solo. with AI squad members on a whole big team with AI members facing AI. And that's just a great way to kind of learn the basics of the game. Mastering weapons, understanding how the vehicles and gadgets work, and kind of from there then graduating into a mix of both with like real humans in PvP and AI. And it's just a really good way for us to onboard new players, but actually even in regions where sometimes we don't have enough players online on the servers, we'll just fill it up with AI until everyone comes online, and we can have those servers full with only Battlefield Mayhem 24/7. So it's pretty cool.
Going back to the maps, Daniel, they're big. We've obviously been able to show off one of them with Hourglass in the trailer this past weekend. But just in general, like to help conceptualize it for people, just how big are they? So like when we give these past references to some of our older maps, which are quite big, now we're at 128 players, like how much of a scale increase have we gone for on some of our maps?
There's not like a general number we said, like, okay, they need to be 2 times, or they need to be 4 times, or something like that. We just, kind of staying true to the formula of Battlefield in the sense that some maps are smaller than others, but across the board, things have increased in size because this is the nature of having 128 players and needing to kind of accommodate for that in terms of pacing. So it has grown in size, but we still have maps that are smaller than, for Hourglass, for example, is one of the bigger ones we have. I think it's the second biggest one, next to Irreversible, which is the biggest one we built. And I think that one is 5.9 square kilometers, which is quite insane. But again, in that map, when you go there, we will have the same mentality of the like the clustering. So if you want to have the example you gave, Freeman, with Sinai Desert, with the town, it's like if you go into Reversible, there is a place there called the oil ports, which is a really big industrial space with silos and also barracks for workers to live in, and different types of industrial buildings and stuff where you can still get that really high octane battle. And over to the side, there's also a big oil rig, which has a lot of close quarter combat. So it's that concept of choosing where you want to fight in this massive battle, basically.
And of those maps, obviously, we've mentioned 2 of them there, Hourglass and then Irreversible, but we're launching with 7 for our all-out warfare part of the game. Like, Oscar, which so far have you found to be the absolute coolest?
I have to say Kaleidoscope. Again, I'm a big kind of Siege of Shanghai fan from BF4, but Kaleidoscope is kind of that, but on steroids. Yeah. With both the wingsuit that we're introducing in the game, the grappling hook that McKay uses, and the zip lines. It's just some like awesome, gameplay that emerges from all of that when players are like flying between skyscrapers, right, left, and center. Must be one of the favorites. How about yourself?
Yeah, that is. I also love urban settings in that sense. It gives you that kind of almost like heat feeling when you're running on the city streets and ducking behind cars. Cars are the best covers in video games ever. They just break in fun ways, so they're awesome to hide behind. And of course, having multiple skyscrapers, having, up in the penthouse of the skyscrapers and fighting another squad that is in another penthouse and is ziplining in between. That's super cool. But yeah, my favorite, I like Hourglass a lot when we saw in the game to reveal. I just love the stadium and the neon city and the town to the south and the arches in the middle and the rolling thunders in between. I think that's just so cool because there's so much variety in there. You can really choose how you want to play. But yeah. No, that will have to say that one. I don't know, maybe.
Orbital is pretty nice.
Orbital.
Just waiting for the rocket launch. There's this like perfect space you can stand on and like to see the rocket launch. Hopefully no one shoots you when you're watching the thing because it's quite spectacular. Yeah. That's a favorite, right?
That is definitely a favorite. I like that a lot. I like the big open space in front of the rocket, which is kind of like a space where you can move in between for a lot of vehicles to do, but the infantry can move to the sides around it and go from building to building to building. But it also has a really cool other aspect because you have the launch site over here, but on the other side of the hill in the mountain, you actually have a cryo facility. And you can choose to like take the roads, or you can choose to kind of just run across the mountain if you want to. But there's also a massive tunnel that goes through. And I've been in some playtests where it's just, okay, we captured, the rocket facility, now let's head on to the cryo plant. And we get into a transport vehicle and we hop in and we start going in that tunnel. It's just like, no. And then also you go for a turn. It's just like one of the places I was facing 2 enemy tanks. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's it. And then boom, I'm gone. So that tunnel is really cool. It's just a lot of cool moments and a lot of the gameplay spaces we built. It's difficult to choose which one is the favorite, to be honest.
I mean, it really is the most common thing, though, because I ask this question of everyone across the studio, and it's always the same every week, because we get to play test and we work through all of the different maps. Every week we discover something new that we love about these new ones. It's so cool. Of these maps, though, of course, they're more than just maps. They're very dynamic in their nature of them. We've obviously took a lot of inspiration from our past and looked, now very much at the new technology offered to us by Frostbite and the upgrades that we've done on all our engines. These worlds are a lot more dynamic now, Oscar.
Yeah, I mean, we've worked for a good 3 years now on some of these new weather and evolution systems. I remember in that first pitch when we talked about the game, maybe it was Daniel, maybe it was someone else from the design team said, like, wouldn't it be cool if we could throw like a real-time tornado onto the battlefield that could turn everything kind of upside down and cause massive destruction? And I think everyone's sitting there kind of nodding. We looked over at the tech team and they're like, oh, are we supposed to make this work? And then kind of a year later, we had that first prototype. And I remember us showing it to other team members like, okay, but that's pre-rendered, right? It just has to be fake. Can't look that like that. And we were like, yep, it works. And I think, it started with, being a thing that would run like spectacle on the maps in massive ways. But now it's kind of one of the core gameplay drivers as well. I mean, you can actually use that big tornado to your advantage, especially if you strap on that wingsuit, just to kind of escape crazy situations. There's just more of that. And then on Hourglass, of course, sandstorm, pretty epic proportions.
Yeah, there's a massive sandstorm, a huge wall of sand that also passes by. I think one of the things that I really love about, the tornado is just physics are fun in games, right? And this is a big kind of like physics entity just moving across the map, and you don't know where it's going to go. It doesn't go in the same path every time. You don't even know if it's going to show up, to be honest. And it just causes a lot of those, unexpected, fun physics moments where there's this the scenario I described in the event where I'm just like I'm running. That was on orbital, and I was running from the rocket towards the rocket assembly building across that big open space. And of course I was stupid, so it was just like I can run that no problem. So I started running, and then I guess they just started running, and then I just heard the shots are coming by. And I was like, oh, of course. I mean, I'm stupid. And I look over, and there's a sniper. He's not in a building. It's actually sitting on a little knoll over there. And he's taking shots at me. And I'm just like, oh, well, this is over. I mean, I'm just going to start to zigzag and do my stuff and try to survive. But the storm is actually somewhere else right now. But it happened to have picked up a transport vehicle and flung it up. And then it had flung it across the map. So I'm just running there. And all of a sudden, we just see like, and he just lands on the sniper. I'm just like, yes. That's because that's the fun, unexpected things when you introduce a lot of physics into a sandbox environment. So I think it's such a great addition to the sandbox, and that's really what we want with 2042 in its essence. Infuse the game with lots of new tools, and the tools that are modern, that are cutting edge technology, and all that. So you just push that in there and let players have a lot of fun with them, combining things and doing that stuff. That's the secret sauce, I think.
Yeah, and it's not just the big flashy things either. There's lots of just small interactions we've built back into our levels now to give players much more agency as they kind of move about the space.
Yeah, we had those in Battlefield 4 as well, but we've expanded the roster there. So things like, hey, I'm holding this checkpoint, and I see that we're playing Breakthrough, for example, and I see there's tanks coming at us. It's like, oh, I'm going to raise the bollards. So they would have to have a teammate actually leave the tank, or have someone else come in and lower them for you to be able to pass through and actually get to the capture point. And I mean, we mentioned all the zip lines. There are different types of gates and doors that you can lock down. There's bridges that you can raise, that you can lower on Kaleidoscope, for example. So we've really leaned into the dynamic nature of the space and make it feel like you can interact and you can counter different type. Oh, there's an attack coming. Oh, I'm gonna raise the bridge, so now their vehicles can't actually pass and stuff like that. So I think the team has done a really great job with that stuff.
Yeah, that's the world then that 2042 takes place in. But if that's the world that we're playing with, what about the things that we're actually playing with in those worlds? So weapons, gadgets, vehicles. We've made some pretty big changes for 2042. The biggest of which that people have been chatting about is specialists and how that's kind of integrating with what we've done in terms of roles in the past. So Daniel, how are the specialists fitting into this world?
So the specialists are, so let's take a step back, I think, first, because we looked at this for quite some time in terms of what we wanted to do here. And we looked at a lot of player data, we looked at feedback, and we looked into like the internal sentiment. And there was a lot of things we can also see through the data specifically that a lot of players chose their class based on the primary weapon that was available. Meaning you didn't choose necessarily a recon because of the gadgetry, but you actually chose a recon because you got the bolt action sniper rifles. And you didn't choose your class because you wanted to play a certain role. So that was the thing we wanted to kind of target with this change specifically. We wanted to bring the game into a space that when you choose which specialist to play with, you go like, okay, I want to play this particular role. So what we've done is that basically you have the traditional class, say recon, is more of a category now. And underneath that category, you have multiple specialists that has a gameplay role that is a recon gameplay role. But what we're also doing to kind of to bring this even further in terms of unlocking the sandbox is that we're saying take Casper, for example. He's a recon type of specialist. His particular gadget that he uses, that only he can use, is the recon drone. But aside from the recon drone, Casper can bring a shotgun, a sniper rifle, an SMG, an LMG, whatever you want to put on Casper, you can put on Casper. You can put a rocket launcher on Casper to couple with the recon drone. You can put as a throwable. You can equip him with C4. So we get away from that space as well, where, as we kind of seen in previous games, where on certain maps that were vehicle heavy, you just saw pretty much one class being played, the one that can counter vehicles. But now you choose your gameplay role, and then we have a whole array of open gadgetry that you can just freely choose from. So we see a better diversity in terms of gameplay styles across all our maps when we're playing the game.
Okay, we talked about Casper there. We showed 3 other of our specialists off in the past week. We've got Falk, McKay, and Boris. Your favorite of the bunch?
Oh, yeah, I always get into too much trouble. I'm a way too aggressive Battlefield player, so the grappling hook with McKay helps a whole lot. But there's something special, right, with Falk as well. Getting the opportunity to revive teammates, from afar. It creates these really unexpected moments where, like, I can actually help that guy, and he can shoot the other guy in the back. You're like, yeah! And, like, it's never felt so great to actually revive a person that kind of really help the team move forward.
Yeah, no, Falk is really good. I think that's going to be a really favorite type of specialist for people that were really into medic type of gameplay. But I think we need to just quickly mention that, like, Falk sits under the support class category, and we're kind of categorizing support as a character that supports the teammates through ammo distribution or through reviving or healing. So there's multiple characters within the support category. Falk specifically has the pistol turret, like Oscar mentioned. So she can heal you at a distance, but she can also revive you at a distance. And she also has a particular trait, a combat surgeon, which means that when she does revive you, she brings you back to full health, which is something, if someone else revives you, another type of specialist revives you, they won't bring you back to full health. So it really leans into that particular role even stronger and pushing that.
Yeah. Of course, we have Boris as well, who's fulfilling an engineer role for us. First time we've had that engineer role back in quite some time.
Yeah, for sure. So Boris is a really cool guy. He has the sentry system as his particular gadget. And this is a sentry system that Boris can place down, and it will acquire targets and support you with supportive fire. But the key is that the trait that Boris has means that he needs to be close to the sentry for it to be able to actually be as effective as it can be. And it's also quite of a squishy gadget in that sense, because it's a perfect thing for someone like Casper, for example, who sits at a distance with his recon drone, because the recon drone can also fire darts of EMP. So he can actually fly over with his recon drone and shoot darts at the turret and take it out instantly, because it's weak against EMP. It's also weak against explosions. So there's always that rock paper scissors counter gameplay taken into consideration when we're building all these things.
Yeah. So that's our specialists, and plenty more specialists to show you guys before we get to launch too. But let's talk about the weapons. I mean, we've got a great selection of weapons already in the game, but there's a very significant gameplay change that we kind of lightly touched on earlier on. People would have seen it for the first time during our gameplay reveal this past weekend. The plus menu.
Yeah.
This is huge.
It is.